Okay, hello, this is the Pinball Captain Development. Is that what we're calling this panel? Yeah, I know, we're going to talk about pinball, right? So, yeah, my name is Ben Heckendorn. I make pinball machines, and I'm joined by the crew of Fast Pinball, and they can tell you what they're all about.
Yeah, my name is Aaron Davis. Dave Beecher and I, Dave's not here on the end, so not sure. We started Fast Pinball together to kind of build a new hardware platform to get people making new games, make it easier to actually make a pinball machine and do what stuff you want to do so much. And yeah, we've been had a great chance to work with a lot of people like Brian and Mike, and see their projects come to life, see a lot of cool ideas turn into a physical game that you can walk up and play. That's what's in the games on the booth that you can see out. Arcade space, see what that's all about. But yeah, myself personally, like I got into building, making pinball just to kind of keep the traditions going. You know, I mean, there's a lot of cool things when you walk up to a game that you're attracted to. You know, it's from an art standpoint, it's like limitations. You have a certain size to work with, a certain space you can work with, and then all these conventions and stuff like that that we've adopted. And so I like working with these limitations and stuff, and see what you can do with that limited amount of space.
It'd be really cool if they made water bottles that were easy to collapse and take up less space in recycling bins. Oh, sorry. Well, what I just said had no relevance to the panel, so it's yeah, I think we were going to talk about like how we all kind of got started with pinball hacking and where that's led us.
Okay. Well, I think that for myself personally, like where it's led me is the chance to work with so many cool people. You know, I think we have a private user group that's made up of only people that actually own pinball hardware. So it immediately cancels out any like armchair quarterbacks. Like we're all actually in it and doing it. And the chance to work with a lot of really smart, creative people from all walks of life is really like empowering and encouraging. You know, it's some built-in accountability. So I might spend some time goofing around with the kids and stuff like that, and not actually working my project. But I know that come Monday, someone's going to go, "So did you do that thing you said you were going to do on your pinball machine?" I didn't. But I think it's a lot of fun to actually like work with a lot of people that are doing good stuff. And I think, do you want to move on to like, Dave, there's some pictures where, so like Mike, for example, like, we were doing some doodles and stuff on like a Peanuts pinball machine that I was messing with. And let's go ahead to like, there's a drawing.
So we should just be clear here.
Yeah.
We had this all organized, and Aaron decided to leave his bag
I
at
didn't
the
decide
office.
to, it just happened.
We just tried to merge a bunch of like whatever we could throw together here quickly. So we're not very organized.
Yeah, so pop down a couple lines. So one of the cool things about the group is like when you're working on a pinball machine, there's like tons of different stuff that you got to do, all different disciplines and whatnot. So this is just kind of flipping through some things that I've done. Like this is I'm working on a Minecraft pinball machine with my kids.
Grid. The grid is nice.
So this was just like taking some. I guess I work more from like a physical standpoint. Like you can model it in software, a lot of different things. I need to like see it physically. So in this case here, like I took like some Lego blocks, like a 2x2 block with a smooth top was the scale I was using for the Minecraft grid. So you can see like on that side, like it's got the grid of the play field because it doesn't seem like you should be able to make a flowy game out of a Minecraft concept and stuff. So this is just some of the physical prototyping I do, but step through there a little bit. Those are like a big 3D printed ramp that we've done where we actually did that in ABS and welded it together. This is another spinner piece that Mike designed, and then we had a guy in town like cut that out of aluminum for us.
It's like an X clamp from an Xbox.
Let's do that.
I don't know.
These are just a bunch of brackets and stuff we made up.
Yes, Replicator 1.
Yep.
The best 3D printer ever.
It's Roy's printer. He left it with me. He's like,
You left it with you?
He's like, if I ever need it back, will you pay to ship it to me? I was like, absolutely.
I wish I could find another Replicator 1. They don't sell them anymore.
No, you can't. So this is like the result of vacuum forming ramps. So this is like the molds that were made. So actually Mike had modeled some of these, and we 3D printed the molds. And then my dad does like vacuum forming ramps for like reproduction pinball machines and stuff. And so we were trying the process out to see like what is it like to actually vacuum form a 3D print. And
that process worked really well. So I used Fusion 360 mollies, and then 3D printed them on a Rep 2.
yeah.
Yes, I don't know if you see the lower right on there is where the 3D print is. A lot of that is obviously wood, Bondo, and some other stuff. But you can kind of see the top on that one to get the more detail on there. Was
How many
actually down the
bolts do
3D
you get
print.
from that? before it deteriorates?
We'd only done like one set of poles. What was interesting with the 3D prints is like, it's not a good seal. So when you look at the ramps, you can see the texture of the filament material because it's actually pulling air through the 3D print. So
They're not actually watertight.
right. But so, I mean, this was just, these are just some of our boards that thrown in there.
Because back in the old days of the 90s, like Williams would actually, they rolled a lot of aluminum or steel.
Right.
But none of the modern homebrew people can afford to do that. Like even with our games, like we're doing like Redwood.
Yeah.
Because that's good for a couple hundred bowls.
Right.
But it wouldn't have been good for like, 20,000 flash games back.
Well, I think that's the big thing
The
too. is
pinball
like-
machine flash, not Adobe Flash.
But I mean, working on workflow and stuff, so that's what we were messing a lot with those molds we were making.
Yeah, especially since I didn't know a lot about, Aaron's dad is kind of mold master, and there's a lot of shapes that basically I didn't know that I needed to do, that they ended up having to do in Mondo. So had we had the time, it would have been easy to go back into the 3D model, change those things, reprint it, and that process can just iterate super fast. I mean, we'd have 3 different ramp shapes that are the same start, middle, end, but have a little bit of different flow to it, and just run through and actually make it. My game has a lot of 3D printed actual ramps.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a nice, we can go a lot of different ways.
Actually, the ramps on the prototype Alice Cooper game are all 3D printed.
Oh, nice.
One of the guys that was speaking has a huge bed, like 1 foot cubic diameter
Okay.
printer. It's insane.
Oh, wow.
Is it a Cartesian? Or is it-
Yeah, it's Cartesian. I haven't actually seen it, but I know it could basically print an entire ramp in one piece.
Awesome, yeah.
Yeah, so just kind of cruising through the rest of these here, like the shot with the laptop on it was where, so Mike was working through the animations of like a video mode for the Peanuts game. So it's just basically the football kick.
Which is held hostage until this game flips.
Yeah.
So I have it, and it all
I'm
works.
moving.
So it's, but yeah, when making the games, everybody's kind of has their different take on how to start. Mine was get to flippers flipping as soon as possible, because I made a bunch of toys that just didn't work because I was just in my own head and not just putting it there and bashing on it. So yeah, with Charlie Brown, it's like, is that the laser cut one?
This is the laser cut playfield. So we were getting ready to go to the Chicago Expo one year, and we had to get some playfields cut, and a buddy of mine had his machines up, and they were ready to go. We get out there to cut it, and it's just not working right. It's way too wide, not lining up right.
Oh, that's pretty impressive.
But their lasers were dialed on, so like they're dialed in. So we took the cut files for the CNC, and we're actually like laser cutting 1/8 inch MDF, and then contact cementing, gluing those together. And that did, like, it was awesome.
Yeah, I was going to ask what kind of curve you had with a 1/2 inch laser cut, but I guess that wasn't
Yeah.
a problem.
No, so it was very interesting. So originally I thought, like, let's make a template. I'll take it home and cut it out. We'll call that good. I was like, you know what? Cut me 4 of those. And it actually ended up working out really cool. We took the top one and cut around the inline guides.
And by layering it, you could simulate having different depths that you
Exactly.
couldn't achieve with a laser.
Yeah. So the top sheet was a little bit bigger around where you screw in your lane guides.
So it's like on the other side of the playfield, there's usually a pocket depression where the magnet goes.
Yeah, and it was really interesting to see how quickly that came together. The challenge of it was like you're gluing these things together, and they're kind of mushy a little bit, and they were all skewed a little bit this way.
I remember seeing those pictures, like the first one where it looked all nice, and then it was like the horror show, trying to get everything to line up.
There you go. So this is a piece that so Mike printed these also. I was kind of doodling up what I wanted to have for like the Red Baron mode, and it had like a shot where the ball would go into there, and then you've got Snoopy sleeping on the top of it, and then when it goes to the Red Baron Fighting Ace, modes, it twists around. And so it's cool. So I'd actually like send him the servo motor we were going to use and modeled that right into the print, and that's what we ended up with there. So
I've noticed making pinball, specifically America's Most Haunted, was the gateway drug that really got me into 3D printers. That was like the first killer
reason
app.
to have a 3D printer.
Yeah, and then I became completely addicted. I have like 7 of them now. So, but yeah, pinball really got me hooked on 3D printers. And I would say if you're here and you're thinking about maybe trying to build a pinball or making something like that, I would highly recommend getting a 3D printer. They're super affordable now, and it's like a magic bullet for things like this.
It's cool. It's cool to actually like take on the challenge of like modeling some stuff. I mean, that software is you can download free software all day long that'll actually let you do it and get you started, and then you can figure out how your workflow is going to be and figure out the best fit. Just kind of rounding out this peanut stuff that we were doing here. So one of the guys that works for me, he's a cartoon artist, and he'll study the original artists down to where he gets their pens and uses the same pens that they do and all that kind of stuff. And so he's very quiet, very doesn't talk a ton, but he's looking at this pinball stuff going, could we ever make a Peanuts pinball machine? And so what he actually did was go through and drew all the Peanuts characters playing these make-believe pinball machines that became the side art and stuff for the game. So it was kind of fun, and it was a cool way to get somebody else into pinball from a different direction, from purely an art standpoint. It was like he's seeing it as a canvas.
Are you actually considering manufacturing or getting a license for Minecraft or Peanuts?
I got to meet some people at MyCon who we discussed some potential paths to doing something, but I think that it's definitely the kind of situation where anytime you're dealing with a license, you need to be careful. They don't want to see you creating a big, massive, complete game and saying, let me do this or not. They will.
Well, it's just like if you want to be an author, you don't take a completed book to a publisher and say, publish this.
Right.
You say, here's an idea, and then you develop an outline, and then you get the deal.
Yeah, and again, anytime you're working with a license, I think you've got to be, mindful of. Some people just don't want to do it. Danny originally wanted to do Calvin and Hobbes. Mm-hmm. He's like, there's no way that license would ever happen, so let's do Peanuts instead, because maybe that might happen. But anyways, and this is just kind of an overview of what the Peanuts playfield looked like. The 3 shots in the middle that you can see there, that was the therapy station where Lucy sits and works. At the top there, that little house piece is where the dog house we looked at would sit. Just tinkering around with hot glue and stuff.
Yeah, glue. And foam core.
I've talked for too
I'm not on
long.
the phone cord.
Really? Yeah.
I'm team plywood.
But foam core you can cut with a knife so easy. I want to put a pop over there.
Yeah. So how many plays do you get out of it? You I think last time.
Hundreds.
Yeah. It's tougher than you think. So I made, I don't have photos of it, but I made what I call a shooting rotisserie. If you're into pinball repair, you're probably familiar with the idea of bolting your table to a rotisserie so you can flip it around and whatnot. So what I have in my shop is I have this, it's kind of like this, skeleton rig of a pinball machine, but it can rotate, 180 degrees so you can get at the bottom of it and play it, but it's also at 6.5 degrees with flippers. So basically you can build the game and play it as you're playing it. So you can hot glue something in place and then immediately flip it. The bottom 20 inches of it is a plywood, Italian bottom with the flippers and the ball trough and all that. And then the top 40 inches of it is half-inch foam core. So you can buy 20 by 40-inch foam core. That's 7/16. Actually, it's not exactly a half inch, but it's close enough. And then I slide that in as a cartridge, and then I can develop it. Then I pull it out, I scan it into the computer, and I draw it up. Then I go to FedEx Kinko's, and I get a printout of what I've done along with a 1-inch grid. Not metric, because I'm American, I guess. And then I print that, I paste that onto another piece of foam core, and I slide that into the cartridge. And then it's okay, that's where all my posts go, all my rails, and then I can see if what I do in the computer works in the physical world as well.
All right. Actually, I should show on this playfield over here what he's talking about with the lower thirds, because this will come up with
Italian bottom.
Yeah.
Here, you should probably.
So, hold this over here. So that lower third that he's talking about, the Italian bottom is this portion here. So most games have some version of that, but where you spend all the time iterating and changing your design is down this direction. So what he was describing is he has a fixed setup here, but this upper section you swap that out without having to rewire all the flippers and stuff. Because you end up with a pretty standard set of mechanisms and stuff like that that's controlled here, and you don't want to have to change that every time you tweak a design and stuff like that. So just an example of workflow, that works for the designer. The designer.
Oh yeah, I've got pop buffers in it, BUKs. Yes.
Screw those in, or you pop those in?
Oh well, I can explain this if you'd like. So what I do with the
Foam core is, it's all about the surface area below it. So what I do is I use longer screws. I'll use 2-inch size 6 screws. And then you put those, I have a poker, you poke a hole through the foam core, then you put your screw into it. And then what I do is I laser cut out acrylic discs that are about 1.25 inches in diameter. And you put that on the bottom like a big giant washer, and then you put a nut on it, so it spreads out the force, so the screw doesn't strip through the foam core. Yeah, I can take, we use the old Data East style one-piece pop bumpers. So yeah, you just cut a 3-inch hole or whatever it is, and you can actually stick that up there and screw it into the foam core, and it will hold.
That's the one that
Yeah, I know, it's hard to believe, but I do put some hot glue around it, not a whole lot, but it holds. I didn't think it would work either. I've been planning to make this rotisserie system for years, but when I finally did it, I was kind of surprised at how well things held. And we also have the new Scott Danesi Super Fox that they use on Total Nuclear Annihilation. Like, bram, bram, and yeah, same thing. It's like you get 3 points, and it holds in pretty well.
The washer trick underneath, that
Yes,
makes sense.
laser cut a big acrylic washer with a little.
There you go. Well, let's. Do you want to jump in here? I mean, we talked a little bit about what you do with all the modeling and stuff.
Oh,
and how,
yeah,
like,
that's
you
probably
know,
a good segue. So the game that I'm working on is using the Pinball 2000 setup as far as a reflected screen. So it basically uses a thing commonly known as Pepper's Ghost, where you're looking at something that is a reflection of something that's in another place. So Pinball 2000 used that by basically having a monitor reflecting off the glass. So to show kind of the process of what I was doing here, I just want to show that's my concept art for a robot punching on the ground and trying to punch through the ground. And so if we go through to, let's do 3ds Max animation first. So I go into 3D Studio Max and I've made this character, it's a 3D character in real time, and he's animated, he's looking around, and then he's going to jump down from the top monitor down to the lower playfield. And these are just a bunch of animations in punching, getting shocked, and dying, ultimately. And so this is done in 3D Studio Max. You use Maya, Blender, any 3D animation package. That gets exported out to Unity, that bottom one, Unity pipeline. This is the one that you can get called. So that. So this is what my desktop at home looks like. That's fine. Okay, so on the left, Unity Editor. On the right, the two screens that are going to be used in the game. The top screen is where the back glass is. The bottom screen is what's going to get reflected on the playfield. So if you play it here, Unity, I use a thing called Playmaker. And this is a state system, and it's just sitting there waiting for the pinball machine to basically say something. Like, go to this mode, this thing happens. Or when he's punching, it goes into a punching state. And whatever I want to have happen, happens in that state. And so go ahead and click on there. So that's what that's showing. And then this just shows those two copies of that character. This is the monitor, this is what's on the top. It's just like a display telling you press start. That's what's going to get reflected. And now I'm just in the editor, just simulating the game starting. And so now the character comes off the top, lands, he looks around, sees what he likes down there, jumps on down. Now he's on the actual playfield. And so now when you're playing pinball, you're actually shooting at this character, and behind him there's targets that when you hit him, they shock him. But also, the kind of cool things he's really into that. That's right there. So one thing that I've been really working on, because I'm using a game engine that's perfect, is that a lot of pinball is like, especially, battle pinball, like a Game of Thrones or something where you're like attacking, and I wanted to basically make something where there's a pacifist mode inside the game. So if you see the spinner on the right there's a heart. And so instead of shooting at the monster first, if you shoot the spinner, which is an orbit shot, now you're in pacifist mode, so anytime you shoot him, you're loving him, you're giving affection to the robot. And so the idea is that you can flail and just flip around and stuff's gonna happen, but it's gonna be mostly, what I feel like Undertale did a really great job of, like, you're not paying attention, you're just like, I gotta kill this thing. So that's one thing that I really like about, Aaron, this hardware and everything. It's connected to a PC, I'm running Windows 10 or whatever, using Unity, a really standard video game environment. You could use Unreal, you could use CryEngine if you wanted, just because this game engine is just listening for calls. So in the end, the pinball playfield acts basically like a controller, like an Xbox controller. The switches on the playfield are switches on the controller. So if you want to, there's a gameplay, sliding glass, remove glass, so this is, this is what it looks like as a, so that's what it looks like with the reflection going on there. And what I'm doing is I'm going to pull the glass off just so you can see what it looks like actually underneath. So the reflection goes away. So now instead of just having targets and art and constantly having to focus your attention on a screen to see some neat video clip or something, now we can actually put little monsters and crap on the actual playfield. And a bunch of those targets, if you want to put a gameplay one. So here's that scene now on the machine. And this is on the show floor to play it, right around the corner. So he looks around, now he's in the hologram. And so now, bashing away, and then you can see the heart spinning there at the end. Basically all of these animations are tied to shots inside the game.
Yeah, and what's really cool too is that we have this private, like I said, the private Slack group, and we kind of see little updates and stuff like that that everyone's working on their games. But being able to stand out here and play the game, like I didn't even know about the, you hit those targets on the left side, and these little yellow guys like start to inflate.
Yeah.
Shot after shot after shot.
They're all,
They
yeah,
explode.
there's a bunch of, I've just got a bunch of characters just sitting below the playfield, just hanging out, and the first shot on target has them play an animation where they pop out, hang out on the playfield, and then I'm just applying a scale to it every time you hit it, and then eventually play an animation where they spin out and go away. So, and the cool thing about this, it took a while to get to this point, to all the stuff we've been talking about, and we've been talking about how he prototypes games. That stuff is a conversation that I like having, because we all have a lot of different techniques and way. So, but this gets into pretty common modern video game development. You know, this is something that anybody who's doing a mobile game or whatever is using this engine can get in here and start, actually making pretty interesting.
I think it's important to do these kind of things because, in my opinion, the video game industry is just light years beyond what the pinball industry is doing, and it would be kind of interesting to see if some of this at least trickled down to pinball, because it's a completely different league.
So I work in the video game industry by trade. We worked on XCOM War of the Chosen just recently, doing a bunch of facial animation and stuff, and so it's interesting coming from the video game industry where it's like I would not want to work on a licensed game for my life.
Yeah, but in pinball, that's all people want.
All people are talking about, I wanted this game, and it's like, well, what kind of layout is it? I don't know.
Just, think about something like, GoldenEye 007 and the Nintendo 64. I mean, it was a good game, but really, I think it was really important. It was like the first licensed game that didn't suck. But like in the pinball world, like if you have something like America's Most Haunted or Dialed In, you have to like beg, borrow, and steal to get people to buy it. It's so weird.
Yeah.
But then also look at the video game industry. It's like, what? Probably literally a million times bigger than the pinball industry.
Well, they got symbolitis too. It's just sort of like everything's got a number after it. So
Yeah. But I mean, imagine if like Valve was like, okay, let's make a pinball machine. We're going to render a display, and it's going to head track, and it's just a monitor, and there's nothing real in it, and you just haptic feedback. Like any studio could do something like that and just utterly decimate the pinball industry.
Right. Which that's why I'm curious from your perspective. Is there a balance? Is it just because the money's not there, or because the passion is there for sure? I mean, we get that from people coming up all day. The passion is there, but to get an artist that is put together an actual package that really, Ghostbusters and Zombie Yeti coming out. That thing really just.
Well, I think, I mean, the money's not really there. It's almost like a who cares kind of thing. It's like when people talk about Half-Life 3. It's like, why does Valve need Half-Life 3? They're already making 30% of all PC game sales, right? But I'm just saying it's for pinball people or like industry people, which I guess I kind of am now. We're kind of lucky that they don't enter it. It's like when Amazon bought Whole Foods, every other grocery store stock dropped. It's like a threat. But I kind of would like to see a video game industry company get into pinball, because look at the kind of stuff we get to.
Yeah, right. And it's like this cabinet design. Oh yeah, and there's the shop actually. And then you can see also that white line around it. I'm running that with Unity, just like the engine running, so I can move stuff like just real time. So I was aligning stuff and just moving stuff by looking over to my right and moving things around. And I have a scoop there. And so another part of this is that basically one game design concept we have is that you only get 30 flips. And this is coming from, I don't really play in tournaments, and I feel like there's part of it is because you're kind of making a game into something it's not by playing it a certain way in tournaments. So I kind of wanted to make a game for that. So it's basically you get 30 flips, and you can use them however you want. And one of the concepts is that you're building up and you're trying to get gold coins to go to the shop to buy more flips. And so you can also buy, the targets are more valuable if you want to be really specific. So I really want to have a game where I would come up there and just start flailing and shooting it really fast, but someone else might be really particular about their shots and hold and take really specific shots, knowing that they only have 30 flips. And I would really curious to see how that would work in a tournament environment, because I feel like it would move things along pretty quickly.
Or they'll start those kids like double flipping, like really quick.
That's another one. There's some kids in the show that are like,
Can you detect when one person goes up to a four-player, starts a four-player game of the Expo?
like a big rubber slap. Yeah, and on my game, it's a problem because, and I want to talk to you about this as well, is I'm resetting a bunch of coils when I do start game, so it doesn't always get it out of the ball trough. And so the natural thing is like, wait, did I start the game? So then player 2 start, player 3 start, wait, is it going? And it's part of my fault. It is my fault for not having that thing get out there in time. Yeah, every game has 4 players, and it'll be like ball 2 on player 3.
It's insane, like, people who aren't into pinball, they cannot find the start button for some reason. Like you see that on Jersey Jack games, there's like half the screen, push the start button, it's over there. It's so weird though, they can't figure that out. Actually, in America's Most Wanted, there's a feature, you can remove excess players. If you're in free play mode, and if you get up to 4 players, and then if you push start again, like for a 5th player, it removes any players that haven't yet started the ball.
Does it recredit the game?
It's only in free play mode, yeah. But yeah, I think we need to hear from Brian here.
Actually, I'd like to hear from the audience, like how many people here are actually interested in creating their own games? Yes, yeah, it's a good bit. How many people own a pinball machine already or know basically how they work? I'm assuming most people. Yeah, so the fast hardware, if you're familiar with the pinball machine, fast hardware actually replaces all of the electronics and PCBs that you would find in an existing pinball game. Most of these older pinball games also had built-in ROMs that controlled the game, so you're not replacing that. But what you do is you have the fast hardware, and then you have a computer that can then generate the rule set. So essentially, you could take an existing pinball machine, rip out all the old electronics, and then replace it with fast hardware and then a computer, and then create your own rule set for that game.
Yeah, somebody came up with like a super thrashed cyclone, right? Was he talking
Yeah.
about
There was a show, yeah. So one gentleman at the show had a cyclone, unfortunately, used for parts. So there's a lot of stuff missing. All the wire harnesses got butchered on it. So he just didn't know what to do with it. Almost wanting to give it away at some point. But anyway, he came to the booth, got so excited by how little hardware. So what you're looking at actually on this image up here is kind of like our starter kit with some power supplies. The 2 upper things are the 2 power supplies. The bigger one is for the 48 volt. The other one is for the 5 and 12. Just below that with the 3 big caps. I know it's kind of hard to see, you're looking at the top of them, but that's the filter board. Those caps are enabling it, so when the flippers are flipping, you have enough current behind them to make those things move. The bottom 2 boards are the driver boards, and that's where all of the switches and coils are controlled by, and all these are kind of like networked together. So it's just our RJ45 cables running between everything. And the other circuit board, just to the left of the 3 caps, is the controller board that controls all of the lighting and then any driver boards that you have. So anyway, with this little hardware, you can get a machine up and flipping. The white things to the left are the LEDs. Is what, 50 in a break?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a cluster of 50. You would break those apart and put those all over the play field.
Those are serial RGB LEDs, correct?
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
Yeah, and then you can take, so that's the cyclone example, but then you can take it a step further. You can actually create your own play field and use parts you can buy from like Pinball Life, vintage pinball parts, and then essentially create your own game. And an example we have here down, the scene at the end there is that if you have a reference design like this, you could actually start with that, buy parts from different suppliers, put it all together, throw in this fast hardware, and also with the computer with the MPF, which is very easy to use. It's basically, it's Python scripting. Then you're like 75% of the way to having your own custom pinball game.
Well, and the MPF that he just mentioned, it's called the Mission Pinball Framework, and it's an open source pinball framework, basically the whole game controller, all the player management, scoring, all that stuff. So it's in some ways it's almost like a paint by numbers kind of thing. Like here's all the stuff you have to have in your game that you didn't think about. Ball finds, like all
Yeah,
sorts of things.
Missing ball compensation,
Yeah, right.
search balls.
Yeah.
Right, ball search, ball count, keeping track of balls, players. You basically can, if you run the basic program, you can just basically hit start, if you have a start button, and if you have a trough, it'll eject the first ball, and from then on, you can basically just have a very simple game, and then build out the rule set from there. The other advantage too with the MPF is that it ties into Unity, so what Mike is doing is actually just a port that communicates with the MPF, and then everything's integrated. So you can take it as far as you want, you can take it as simple as you want, and you can actually use your strength. Like if your strength is not electronics, you don't have to worry about the electronic part. Or if your strength is not the mechanics, you can buy some of these mechanisms off the shelf.
And then you have a choice of programming languages?
You don't have a choice of programming languages if you're
with the MPF.
With the NPF, yeah, NPF is basically just Python scripting, but if you are good with Python, you can create your own Python scripts that go a little bit deeper
Right.
than just the general.
That one's interesting too, because I've used some Python just enough to get by, and I'll do things not having it do it that way, where basically, because Mission Pinball works in that you basically are configuring devices. So in my game, I have a scoop and I have a drop target in front of it, and if the ball goes in the scoop and that drop target's up, it needs to know to drop that drop target to shoot it out of the scoop. So when you're saying, hey, I got a scoop, it's going to say, basically it's called a ball device. And a ball device means that's something that can hold a ball. And that tells Mission a bunch of stuff, meaning like if there's not a ball in there, that might be a bad thing. And so then you basically define that thing and say, this coil is the coil that fires that scoop. This is the switch that knows it's there. And in mine, I just said, hey, when you're about to fire it, drop that drop target.
So are you defining the object in the playfield almost like you define objects and functions in programming language?
I mean, I don't know well enough to
Yeah,
really
what you would do is you would say, okay, I have a coil and it's on channel 1, and I have a switch and it's on channel, a separate channel 1, and then you say, okay, when this switch, I fire that coil, like maybe for a drop target. The most simple drop target would be, you have 3 switches and a reset. And there's actually a configuration for a drop target, and you say, okay, I have switch 1, 2, and 3, and I have coil number 1, and when these 3 targets drop, then I reset with a certain amount of time. So it's very much not, with the MPF, it's very much not a programming language, but it's more of a configuration tool. But it ties in very nicely with the fast hardware, because you have you can run it on a Mac or Linux, and it basically can communicate right out of the box with all the fast hardware.
And also too, like the fast hardware, we have what we call our fast protocol language, which is what MPF uses to talk to our hardware. So there's a set of commands you can do. Any software that can make a high-speed serial connection, virtual COM port connection, can control the hardware. So I mean, there's guys writing stuff in Ruby, stuff they're writing in .NET. Like I wrote a simple game in jQuery using a browser serial plugin, and it's like you can see the lane changes moving around, and it was super boring, but it was like,
Yeah,
cool.
and once you get that all configured, the thing that I found when leading up to this show, I had made some music for bonus. Like I had this plugin that I really wanted to use called Rise and Hit, and it was just like bang. So I wanted to use that for counting up bonuses, and I was like, how do I do a bonus mode? And so I just made a mode called bonus, and guess what? They already configured that shit. So I already did all this like bonus stuff. Like it would save for a certain amount of time. It would show whatever you wanted to display, and then it would kick back into the game mode. And so once you get past that point where we're talking about where you've got your coils and your switches defined, the mode stuff and the scoring and all that, it really gets to be a lot of fun. And I will say, actually, artist friend Jason helped me, and he didn't have the machine to work with. So Mission works really well virtually. So he had a picture of the playfield, and it's a thing called Monitor that'll show the playfield. And it'll show the states of every single switch and LED on it. So if I'm flipping a switch on the game, it'll show in the monitor that's going on. So he can work on another machine in another state or another country and basically update stuff. So he was sending me mode code for having like lanes switch when you flip the flipper and stuff like that. And it was just like, cool, I'll just integrate that, bam, back to work, and you're not touching anything that might make a coil misfire or something, screw the machine up. So.
I actually I have a byte, and I rotate the bits in the byte, and that's how I do my lanes. I'm really old school, so
you should talk about some of the games you've done.
Yeah, so I've done 6 custom games up to this point, and I think that when I first started, I was taking an engineering approach. Like I felt like, okay, I'm going to design this game and build it, and I'm going to find like the perfect way, the engineering way to actually do it right. But what I realized is there's a ton of different ways to do it. Like every single game was done just a little bit differently, whether it was the artwork or the way I cut the playfield or whatever. But I think the key there is that if the people here that are wanting to build their own custom games are probably going to want to play to your strength. There's enough support out there for whether it's hardware or software or even like maker spaces do have a lot of tools and stuff. Not everybody has the same strength, so there's enough support out there that you can, as an individual, can play to your strength, and you don't have to actually follow like one single method of building a game.
You're going to find new friends really fast if you have core strengths.
Yeah.
I mean, I found that as soon as I started showing 3D modeling and printing, Then John, who's doing Spaceballs, has the fucking alien with the "Hello, my baby"
Yeah.
in the back. And I just got a Form 2 printer, so I basically was like, cool, let's do something really stupidly high res. And so it's got the hat, and it's just off the Thingiverse. There was that model, the hat and the cane. And then shortly after, Mark, doing Nightmare Before Christmas, wanted to have the tub, the walking tub, so he locks balls in the tub. And he showed me how big it was, and I'm more than happy to help that because Mark helped me with a ton of coding stuff and a lot of things. So it really, everybody.
Well, it's cool to jump out of your project once in a while when you're just grinding away at it. Take a chance to jump in and be like, I can solve your problems right now on a little break, and that just kind of feeds on the energy.
Yeah, that feels good. Now back to
Yeah, so if you're good with mechanics and you're good with mechanical design, you could be building and printing your own 3D parts. If you're good with art, then you could be doing, artwork for the playfield or the back glass of the cabinet. If you're not good with that, then maybe you could buy a vintage cabinet and refurbish that. Or
Aaron, weren't you talking about how it's actually better to buy new parts than to try to scrounge old ones?
Yeah, there's some areas where, like, especially when you're starting your first thing, I usually try to tell people to like minimize the challenges that you have. And so a lot of times somebody might give you like, here's a burnout playfield, have at it. And you're like, wow, I got all these free parts. Most people waste most time with crappy flippers.
I did that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, you might spend over like 40, 50 bucks on a flipper setup, but trust me, it's so worth it because you can wire it all up exactly right and see it flip, and it's great. But there's been guys that have wasted literally weeks. You get time between work and family and social life and all that stuff. You get that window of time to sit down and make that flipper flip and find out that, like, it was never going to flip because it was toasted inside and was never going to move.
and there's enough manufacturers out there that support the repair market that you can sort of leverage all those things. It's pretty cheap now.
Yeah, like that the Mantis trough, like this is a redesign of the trough. That's just has a lot of really cool stuff in it. And to the point about like destroying old games, a friend gave me a Victory, Premiere Victory. I always play that. I played a little bit and it was just like, this is not a game for me. And I ended up stripping the cabinet and pulling the parts just like Aaron said and wasting a shitload of time basically asking these guys like, why is this flipper not working when there's a lead cut inside of the coil? Yeah, and then in the end, yesterday actually some friends of mine, I tell them that and they're like, Victory? I love that game. And here I go, I just fucked one up. That's one less victory in the field.
Do you ever think Hollywood Heat, how Hollywood Heat is like the #1 game to retheme? You ever think actual Hollywood Heats will become valuable because they'll be rare at some point? That happened to Congo. So many Congos got stripped out for other... Yeah, it was a flop movie, so the game was a flop. So they got parted out and they were used to fix other WPC 95 games. So now, but Congo's a great game, but now that's why Congo's gone up in price and rarities because so many of them are kind of destroyed.
That was the Pitchfork game, right? They like rethemed.
The Pitchfork one was a retheme of Congo,
Yeah, but now you wouldn't do that to a Congo because now they're like, Congo's a cool game. If they made that game now, that'd be like a $12,000 game with stuff in it. We should probably take questions. I think we have to wrap up here very soon.
And also too, like, I mean, there's your minds are racing with like, oh my god, I want to know this answer right now. Like, come and hang out at the booth. Like, this is what we do. It's just talk this stuff all day long. So, yeah.
Hey, so Proto One's spectacular. Like we were drawn in immediately yesterday, and like I was even home yesterday talking to my wife who doesn't care about pinball. Like we're just like raving about it to her, like because it's just so engaging seeing that virtual world laid upon the physical world. And just to touch on this confluence of video games and pinball. One of the games that I've been like chasing almost my entire life is Baby Pac-Man, which is in the retro cave, which is an insanely hard game, but it was so compelling, not just because it was so hard, but because it was so elusive. I went probably a decade before I was able to find it again, and it's unmameable. You can't. That's part of the reason why I think it was so compelling for me that I kept looking for it. You can't name a physical pinball game, and I've always been curious why there hasn't been more of that convergence of pinball and video games.
There's a documentary called The Battle to Save Pinball, or The Battle for Pinball. It's an excellent documentary. I had already been wanting to do a pinball machine, but then I saw that and I just fell in love with the concept of what Pinball 2000 could have been. And hearing Pat Lawler talk about how you need a big ass team of X amount of people and all that, and that the other teams really only had a small amount of time to get their games done, and then the other guy that did the Star Wars game did it his way, and that came out the way it did.
there was two teams basically saying, okay, here's our pitch for Pinball 2000, and then it was the Pat Lawler, George Gomez one that was executed upon.
Yeah, so at the time, that hardware and what you were doing, I think it was 98, 99, you're basically running that on like Super Nintendo, graphical quality as far as everything is like, they're pre-rendered little guys.
Yeah.
So that's the big thing about the Unity things, it's real time. I didn't get a chance to really get into implementing it yet, but if I hit a target, I can create an Omni light that's real time and it's red and it lights everything in the scene red. So as I'm doing light shows on the inserts, I can then light the 3D stuff. And because it's real time again, which is the big difference I think between Pin 2K, it had to be baked down and you had to basically, I can only imagine artists, working on something and then rendering it out and then having to cut down the sprites and then giving it to a programmer and then they can implement all that fucking, this is all, we're not there anymore, it's 2017, you can actually have a real time running game engine. The thing Brian brought up as well is like, you don't have to do the Pin 2K thing with Unity as well. You could just run it on, I did some tests where we ran the RGB DMV on it as well. It just gets into what are you trying to do with it. And for me, the hologram is such a strong concept that just never really got going. And doing game development and seeing kind of how VR, from kind of talking to people on the investment publishing type things, like where they're interested in all that, and AR and MR and all that, I was just like, this is right here. It's basically,
It's important to remember that Pinball 2000 didn't kill Pinball at Williams, slot machines did. Those games sold well, even episode 1, but they're just like, well, we make more money with slot machines.
yeah, now,
Who knows what could have happened if that concept would have continued?
yeah.
Another question.
Yeah, we probably should. Sorry.
Yes, sir.
What software would you recommend the most for 3D modeling?
So for 3D printing, I've been using Fusion. So I was a product designer for 3D Studio Max. I worked for Autodesk for a while. So 3D Studio Max. But modeling, I moved over to Fusion recently, Fusion 360. I didn't get any images, so please come by the booth. I'll pull the glass off and show you. The whole ramp segment is all broken into pieces so that I could work on the outer wall, the middle wall, and the other like separately, and then not have 3D prints that were the whole ramp. But Fusion 360 is kind of where I go to because that when you're working in a solid modeler and then you want to print it or you want to cut it, that geometry is just really clean. Whereas you're in Max Maya Blender, you can have all kinds of geometry inside that'll fucking 3D print around. So.
I use Fusion as well, and it's really convenient because there's actually a button on the window which is 3D print, and it'll take whatever you have selected and go, whoop, open it up in the 3D printer program, and bam, there it goes.
And now that I know that Ben uses Fusion 360, I can say, hey Ben, check out this design that I did in Fusion 360, and it's just, now you got it. And so collaboration in that software. So that would be my suggestion. But if you're comfortable in anything, just, modeling's modeling. Like if I was given the challenge of learn this new modeling program, it's like, I've been modeling a long time, so it's just like, those concepts are there. So Fusion 360.
And by the way, Mike's ramp is so smooth. Mike, how many iterations did you do in the ramp?
About 30, I would say. And it's like, and I was going to take a picture of all because it's just like this graveyard of 3D prints that I try to be like, I was thinking, like the 8-bit guy said, I talked to him, he's got all that stuff stuck on the wall behind him. I was thinking I was just like hot melt glue, 3D printed shit all over, but.
We have a box at my shop where we put all it's not that the 3D prints fail, it's just that this iteration does not work.
That's right.
It goes right into the box, and then we take that box junk to shows, and then the kids love it. Like, here, all the free junk you want, kids.
Well, my dad does the vacuum form ramps, so he does the vacuum form ramps, and I get the garbage ramps, the ones that have a slight blemish on it. So we take those and bandsaw those together and glue them to something else and prototype with these pieces. But when we ship out hardware to some friends and stuff like that, if there's room in the package, we'll shove some junk ramps in there, build subways with them or something. So.
But yeah, if you're thinking about making pinball, I would definitely suggest it, even though it kind of takes a lot of time and effort. You also have to be slightly crazy to do it. But I mean, there's a lot of examples. Like I took a homebrew game and made it a commercial game. Total Nuclear Annihilation was a homebrew game. And Keith Elwin did that Archer game and got hired at Stern. Pat Lawler, the famous designer, he designed Bonsai Run in his garage. Took it to Williams and they gave him a job. And that's where Pat Lawler got to start. So the next Pat Lawler could be in this audience.
And the big thing is this community too. I mean, like we all need something to be working on and doing anyways, keep the mind moving, give you an incentive to learn something else. I mean, before Dave and I started working together, I'd never like put any circuit boards together, and now it's like, I was so proud to get a microscope so I could do it with tweezers underneath at my own house.
Yeah, and with maker spaces, they have routing equipment and tools, and it's a lot easier to actually design something on the computer and then just have somebody or go in and have somebody help you actually make it.
Yeah,
Hey, and this is where Ocean Park is too.
Well, the makerspace is like, that's the excuse killer right there. You're like, oh, I don't have room to work on it. Oh, oh, I don't have a tool to use. Like, they have it all. By the time you really do the math on like how much it would cost to even buy a table saw or something, that works out to like 6-7 months of having access to lasers and plasma cutters and CNC routers, and also tons of people that know this stuff probably better than you, and they're willing to like teach you. They will just sit down and show you that idea you have, this is how you do it, and inevitably you'll give some back to somebody else who's watching you do that, going, okay, I watched you do this and I want to do it, and then you find someone else to collaborate with on your project. So makerspaces are your biggest ally.
And here in town, that's ADX is one of the bigger ones, and they have just recently, I've been talking with them about how they've just got a couple of new routers from CNC Router Parts, which is, I think, somewhere in Washington. So they have classes available for learning how to use a CNC router, so you can actually go there and figure it out. I built an X-Carve, which is like a home CNC thing. I think Scott did that as well, right? For Total Annihilation.
Yeah, actually, X-Carve is pretty near here in Rockford, Illinois.
Really? Okay, that's cool. So that's like it's like a $1,200 or $1,300 thing, and it's just you screw it together, and it's basically just CNC router.
Yeah, so if anybody else has any other questions, our booth is just the first one right here on the outside, and we're welcome. Come see the games. We've got 4 games, and any questions, we're there to answer questions for you.
Thanks for coming out.